Hello again, this is Dave Schroeder, the designer of the Weltkrieg series. In this video I'm going to show you and talk about the maps and pieces used in the game. Let's look at the map first. This is the map of the standalone introductory game of the series, Tannenberg, Eagles in the East. This is part of a larger map that's available in the East Front game package. Let's start by looking at the map overall. The playing area here in the center looks kind of like a topographical map. Around the map are various player aids that are usually on separate cards in the other games. Right now, let's look at the terrain key down here in the lower right-hand corner. So this is the close-up of the terrain key at the lower right-hand corner of the map. This shows two things, the terrain types and the map symbols. The terrain types are represented by different patterns that you see on the playing area. For example, this is clear, which is like farmers' fields, broken, which is like light rolling hills, woods, which are rather dense forests, and down here you see lakes and rivers. Over on the other side, you see the description of the different map symbols. For example, a solid brown line is a double track rail line. This, of course, is the symbol for a port. This is the symbol for the international border at the start of World War I. And then the different names for countries, cities, and other terrain features. Now let's zoom in and take a look at the detail of the playing area of the map. The first thing you'll notice about the map is that the playing area is subdivided into a grid of hexagons. These are just called hexes for short. The hexes regulate the position of units and their movement on the board. We use a hex grid because the distance between any two adjacent hexes is the same. If we used a square grid like a chessboard, we would have a problem with diagonals. The hex grid has no diagonal problem. Each hex has a number, and this is how you can tell one hex from another. You'll use these hex numbers when you place pieces on the board to set up the game. The first two digits of the hex tell you which north-south column of hexes to look at. Take a look at hex 1110. Right here. The first two digits, 1, 1, tell you that this hex is in the 11th column. Normally the column to the very left of a map is 0, 1, but this map is a truncation of a regular map from the series, and the leftmost column on this map is 0, 8. The last two digits of the hex number, in this case 1, 0, tell you which hex in the column. These last two digits start with 0, 1 at the top or north of the map and increase as you move along the hex row to the south. Now let's look at the terrain. I'll use a large red arrow to point to the terrain I'm describing. The first terrain you see here on the map is clear, like farming fields. Or it could be like this next area here, broken, which is rolling hills or smaller wooded areas. In the next area, which you see here, it's woods, which are thick forests. In this area down here along the river is a swamp. The map also has two types of rivers. The first, like what you see here with the white outline, is a normal river. But back here you see a major river, in this case the Vistula. Major rivers are extremely wide and are major obstacles to movement. The map also has lakes and ocean. Up here you can see the coastline and what is actually the Baltic Sea, while down here is a lake. The maps and games of the Der Weltkrieg series are a little different than those of other war games. In this particular series, each hex side can have different terrain. Take a look at hex 1211, which is pointed at by the red arrow. Notice that the terrain between hex 1211 and 1212 is clear, whereas between 1211 and 1311 there's broken terrain. And again, between 1211 and 1312 the terrain is wooded or woods. This system triples the amount of terrain information on the map and makes the effect of terrain more realistic. You will get used to it quickly as you play the game. Also on the map, you can see the borders between countries. This dark gray dotted line is the border between Germany and Russia at the start of World War I. You can also see the main rail lines, which are the solid brown, or single track rail lines, which are these dotted brown lines. The various terrain features on the map will affect unit movement and combat. For example, as you might guess, it takes longer to cross a dense forest here than it does to move across a farmer's fields. The effects of terrain on movement and combat are described on the terrain effects chart, which is on the back of the rule books. We will look at this chart in a future video when we get into how to move pieces around on the map.